Good afternoon, colleagues, those who attend this brief here in person and those who are online with us. We are happy to welcome you on this platform, UA Razom, which is, well, intended to explain and provide upgrades on the security information in the Joint Operation Force area and Ukraine with the help of the representatives of Strategic Communication Information Security Center and representatives of the authorities. Earlier today, there was a brief given by Minister of Defense and Minister of Information Policy and Culture. Today is the time for the information snapshot of the day. I had the Strategic Communication Center. To kick it off, let me tell you how we take what's going on in the information space. Regarding Donbass, we can all observe attempts to create an image, a picture, based upon two premises emanating from two narratives. Ukraine is preparing an offensive and Ukraine is an aggressor. And the second message is the humanitarian catastrophe, and therefore locals need to be provided with some relief. And attempts of the so-called local media and other parties are aimed to support these two narratives. The significant number of information attacks can be attributed to the fact that there are different media personalities in Russia, affiliated media, being deployed, so to speak, in Donbass. That's how we explain the situation in the past 1 week. Interestingly, this image building endeavor involves government institution of Russia, security service, the investigation committee, border guards and others. They are all involved in the production of all those fake reports that are then disseminated by various other media. Given this development, we understand that some sort of a political decision must have been made, and we may expect that certain other political decisions are likely to be made. In the aftermath, you could look yourself at the calendar and see for yourself what type of international events are in the air. So it is quite likely that the current energized media developments could be related to those events in Russia and elsewhere. With this, I will ask my colleague, Mr. Mayorov, who will cover the agenda of this particular brief, touching on the developments of the past week, and present this digest of urgent information, threats and vulnerabilities that we produce and disseminate regularly. Those of you who would like to get it, subscribe for it on our site. So we'll be getting information, including this digest, afterwards. Maxim, thank you, Ihor. Good afternoon from me. Indeed, our first brief dedicated to information threats and vulnerabilities is gonna be built on what we started producing about months ago, the digest of information threats and vulnerabilities, which summarizes the situation over the previous week. This digest builds on the product of our partners from fact-checking organizations such as Stop Fake, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, Inform Napalm. Apart from that, the Strategic Communication Center carries out its own research, which the findings of which are then used for this digest, and summarizing the information, produce this information product. If you compare this week's digest with the previous week's one, you should probably not find it surprising that certain important developments have taken place, and the focus, the emphasis is now more on political and military pressures, whereas previously we would cover different negotiations and talks held involving Emmanuel Macron of France, that is to say, giving more focus on diplomatic effort and how Russians interpret this digest is almost exclusively dedicated to the military topics and the pressure created through that, proving the fact that since last week we have all witnessed an escalation of military situation. So this week's digest contains three basic themes: discreditation of Ukraine as a whole, military and political pressure mounted, and fakes and staged developments in the temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk and Luhansk. As far as the discreditation of Ukraine is concerned, we see that Russian media still insist that the Russian government is dependent or is not independent. Head of the intelligence service Narishkin maintains that the Ukrainian government is weak and led by Ukrainian nationalist radicals, and on the other hand by its Western patrons. That is to say, it means that we'd love to engage in a dialogue, but the government is too weak and too dependent. Another theme created to discredit Ukraine, furthermore, is the focus placed on fresh resources as related to the prediction that Russia would start an offensive on the 16th of February. Some Western media, we can recall, did it, and Russia is trying to show that in fact the offensive didn't start on the 16th, not because of the exposure of the plans, but because the news was fake from the very beginning. Also, sanctions imposed against pro-Russia propaganda such as Murayev, Guzhva, and Shari was also described as the desire to clean up the information space, to persecute freedom of the speech. But one of the newer themes is accusation of Ukraine in of genocide. On February 15th, it was Putin who called developments in Donbass genocide during one of its briefings. By the way, he had started even before that, however, more cautiously. Last December at the Human Rights Council meeting, answering the question where developments in Donbass could qualify as genocide, he mentioned that Russophobia is the first step, preparation to genocide. Now he himself calls the developments a genocide. To further prove this qualification, next day after this announcement on the February 16th, the investigation committee of Russia launched proceedings based on the allegations of mass graves discovered in the territory of eastern Ukraine, attributable to the actions of the Ukrainian military counter-terrorist organization and joint forces operation. Propaganda resources started building on this theme, recalling developments at former Yugoslavia's Srebrenica, as if to prove that Ukraine had been trying to commit genocide against Russian-speaking groups living in Donbass. It seems that Russia is going to elevate this theme to the highest possible level. Another global information security agenda is related to further escalation of military and political pressure. Russia keeps mocking what is being said about its plans. On the other hand, sticks to its. We know that announcements about withdrawal of the military troops had been started, but Ukrainian experts all say that the escalation and détente, so to speak, can only start if the military troops based farther on were withdrawn, but this is something that hasn't happened. You know that Russian MFA publicized its response to the earlier U.S. reaction. Amongst other things, in its response, the Russian MFA said that military and technical activities will have to be launched. Then President Lukashenko of Belarus announced that the Russian troops would stay in Belarus as long as it would be needed. The military group concentrated in the Sea of Azov, and the Black Sea remains where it was. In order to further increase the pressure, strategic forces exercise were launched. Rocket capable of carrying nuclear explosives, nuclear weapons were used. Hyper sonic rockets, Kinjal, Kalibr, and Iskander, to name a few. After these factors of military and political pressure, escalation followed. My colleagues have already submitted that mass-scale shelling started February 17th along the entire length of the contact line, and the damage done to the kindergarten in Stanitsa Luhansky, controlled by the Ukrainian government, were initially used to uh, show the action of Ukrainian military against infrastructure in the non-government control areas, but later on they turned the picture into a fake. Same time, the Russian propaganda, and it's not just the media. Ihor here mentioned that many other parties are involved, including FSB, intelligence, border patrols, etc., launched a massive campaign of fakes and imposturing in order to accuse the Ukrainian side of violations of the ceasefire and um, crimes against the civilian population. I can mention several examples, but the list is much, much longer. It would take a long time. Once we are in this daily brief mode, we could give you more detail, but I'll mention the Stirol attack as if involving Polish militants. By the way, our previous digest referred to that piece of propaganda. Well, nice to know that they are reading our digest. So they start playing up this Polish card. Who knows why? Probably to further emphasize lack of Ukrainian dependence. In the vicinities of Horlivka, a fight with the Ukrainian subversion group was also staged. Additionally, Denis Selnelnikov's car was blown, and later this fake was exposed very soon because Selnelnikov never used this vehicle. The license plate was changed that indeed belonged to his fleet of cars. Other fakes later appeared saying that Ukrainian multiple grenade launchers attacked the Russian territory. Later on, a route used to evacuate civilians was shown to be attacked by a landmine. So, on the other hand, if we look deeper, if we delve deeper into this type of analysis, professional analysis, we may say that a number of video appeals or staged events had been, so to speak, produced quite in advance. What is going on, in other words, is not a spontaneous response. It means that there is a plan. Well, what we are talking about today is self-evident, but still this propaganda machine tries to prevail by the quantity rather than quality of their fakes. Yeah, there are certain things that cause more concern, including possible attacks on the civilian population that might come later on, and we could see that last week. One of the fake stories that can surface later might be related to the fragments of Bayraktar drone brought from Nagorno-Karabakh to pose as the Ukrainian drone taken down in the area, and this might be used in order to accuse Ukrainians of using drones to launch attacks on civilian infrastructure in the non-government controlled territories. Thank you. Thank you, Maxim. One thing I'd like to add to what you said, apart from the information threats related to Bayraktar, so to speak, we also, according to our sources, may expect that the Greek diaspora might be used more actively nowadays to produce staged videos, or maybe even being targeted by the separatists in order to use Greece for mounting pressure in the international community. Our special services know of these plans, keep watch on them. Therefore, I would call upon all of you to not be tempted to disseminate without check any videos or photos, because information warfare is carried out in the current battlefield as other forms of warfare. Thank you very much, and see you again tomorrow. Our brief will be provided at 13:30 here at Ukrinform.